When we did the RCD and SCM, Eurorack was Make Noise and Harvestman, and we had like a bunch of companies. And by companies, I mean it was usually like 3 or 4 people sometimes, usually 1 often. And we would have synth meetups in Chicago, LA, NAMM, we'd meet up usually. And it was exciting, and like there was a sense of like we were all building this system together. I remember when Make Noise made the sample playback module, I was like, yes, thank you, because it's on my list to do, and I'm like, I don't have to do that one now. Sales were just good for everybody because we were all small and it was just blowing up. I mean, we thought it was blowing up at the time. It was kind of like the internet thing where like we thought it was amazing. Fast forward 10 years later and like that was like, nothing like that. So yeah, it was a really exciting time, and there was a lot of like cross inspiration between companies, between inventors and enthusiasts. Next thing we kind of did the PEG, which was the envelope version of clock multiplying, clock division, because you don't always want squares, you want sometimes curves. Filled a real niche for a while in the Eurorack. This is how you make envelopes that are timed to clocks. Figuring out how to manufacture stuff was, it wasn't obvious. Like, how do you get these things made? We're making like small batches. We're making hundreds, not 10,000s. Like PCBs, by that point, you could order PCBs online and get them. That made it possible to like kind of iterate through designs faster. Learning like, where do you get buttons that are reliable, pots and knobs like that are reliable. So I was only in Austin for like 3 years, I think. Portland was always on my radar. Portland, Austin are like kind of linked. A lot of people go back and forth. And then 2012, I think I moved to Portland. I just had friends, and Austin the scene is great, but the weather and the droughts were rough. Personally, I wanted to start a family, and I didn't want that to be in Texas. So I knew I needed to get out of there. And then I knew people in Portland, and it was a nice place. And it happened in Portland where we switched to more and more SMT. Also, board houses were becoming easier to access. Like you could submit Gerbers and a BOM through the internet and get a board assembled for you. So that was starting to happen in the late 2000s, I guess. Figuring out how to do SMT was one of those things. Like Eurorack companies were talking. The thing with denser SMT is that it let us use 32-bit microprocessors because those don't come in through hole. It let us use higher res audio, so codecs. So you can do like 24-bit audio instead of on the AVRs. It's pretty low res kind of stuff, 8-bit stuff if you want to do audio. So our first audio design, non-analog audio design, was the SMR. And that was like me being like, is this DSP thing gonna be cool if I play with it? With that, like I had a dev board with an STM32 chip. So ST helped launch the Eurorack revolution too, because they came out with this $10 discovery board. And ST's a French semiconductor company, if you don't know them. And then they launched this discovery board, I think it was the F0 or the F4 or something. And I think one of them had a codec on it, but it was like, $10. Who doesn't want to pay that? And like you can USB and connect and flash your code to it, and it runs like super fast. So like tons of people started using those for Eurorack modules because like they're awesome. So that was my entry into the kind of the more dense 32-bit processors, away from like the 8-bit stuff. And I wanted to do a DSP thing, or I just wanted to like play with DSP. And I pulled out some filter that Max Matthews came up with, the coefficient calculations of the coefficients, and threw them into this little loop, and I pressed play and had my headphones on, and it just goes like dong. I was like, oh, that was awesome. That was so cool. It made it like this, and it's just like ringing, and I'm like how did these numbers cycling through, like the algorithm worked, like it was awesome. So then, yeah, that was like, well, I got to do that. I got to make a bunch of them. I got to make, turn scales, and I have like colored lights that indicate the thing. So that became the SMR.